Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL graduates. Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be going through our updated draft reveals. We're going to be going through some of our thought processes. Both of our teams have changed quite a bit, actually. So it'll be interesting to see how we're setting up for this, whether a template is potentially emerging. And yeah, without further ado, let's jump into the video.
Yes, indeed. So kicking off into my team then, if you recall or haven't seen our first drafts, you could maybe go back and watch it. But I had a draft without Bruno Fernandes in and it had quite a bit of the cash spread. I even said in that video that thinking about it out loud that you pay the extra for Bruno Fernandes due to the minutes. So he is in this draft, spoiler alert, although he's not on screen just yet. My current plan at the moment, it might change. Obviously, we're still nearly 3 weeks out from game week one. It's probably to bench boost in game week one. I did it last year. I think I got 11 points, and that was with like a toss-in no-show because he got injured in training went past the deadline, which was frustrating. So, from personal preference, I just prefer to get it out of the way, and then you can sort of move all those funds into your starting 11. People don't like playing it. I know Ben's not a big fan of game week one bench boost, but it's just the way that I like to do it. So this is the current setup. It's by nowhere near sort of finished or I'm happy with it. There's a lot of little things that I'm still trying to work out and find the sort of the best solution for. So starting off in goal, this is probably one of the main ones is the goalkeepers. I've got Kinski and Verbruggen. Obviously, game week one fixtures, they're not ideal to be quite honest with you. With Brentford away, which I actually think Brentford are going under the radar about how not just their assets, but just they had a great year last year, and also they're just a solid team. Keith Andrews is still the manager, which is you can't say that about most of the teams in the league. So yeah, I think the consistency of Brentford is quite nice. So I don't think that's easy for Spurs at all. Obviously, Villa at home is going to be interesting for Brighton. Villa, very different look to what they were last season. Obviously, we haven't really seen too much of them. Brighton as well, defensively, were really good last season. In terms of expected data, they finished, I think, fifth overall for XGC. So I don't mind having Verbruggen, and it does look a lot nicer come game week 4 and 5. I think they face Coventry and maybe another promoted side, if I'm not mistaken. So the rotation there is not too bad. It's just that for game week 1 on the bench boost, I'd ideally like better fixtures, but there aren't too many around, especially at 4.5 million as well. Into the defence, we've got Mosquera first. This will be any 5.5 Arsenal defender. I think Mosquera is probably the safest in terms of minutes, just as that Saliba replacement. But I wouldn't mind going for Ben White. I think when Ben White plays with Saka, they've got a very nice link up, similar with Timber. So for me, I think he's got maybe a little bit of a higher upside than Mosquera if he is fit and Timber isn't. That'll be the sort of the main gateway there. Obviously, Maguire, I think he's probably United's best defender from game week 1. DEFCON appeal, attacking appeal, which, I don't think that should go unnoticed, especially against Hull and Ipswich, where, a set piece is probably the way that United will probably unlock these sort of teams. It's not going to be free-flowing, counter-attacking football when they're playing low blocks. Don Ballard, obviously very good for DEFCON's last season. Ipswich away first game. Sunderland's away form weren't great last season, so yeah, it is Ipswich though, so that's the sort of thought process there. They then go into Fulham at home in game week 2, which I don't think is too bad of a fixture. Obviously, we haven't seen Fulham really under Arbeloa at all yet. And then on the bench, we've got Mahermovic, easy for me to say. Obviously, very good for DEFCONs and leads his new signing centre back. I'd expect him to be a starter immediately. Aya as well, who seems to be maybe the replacement for Vandenberg, who's out injured, but it could be Schuster as well. So that's another like one of those iffy positions. Likewise with Mahermovic, not necessarily a nailed option there. It will be probably a 5 mil midfielder, defender, should I say though. And then likewise Norgard as well. Norgard obviously is heavily linked with a move to Everton. DEFCON numbers when he was at Brentford before joining Arsenal, very, very good. Just basically that spot will be a DEFCON midfielder, so I can feel assured that I'll have maybe 4 to 5 points as a baseline, and that's why I feel like with most of the bench boost, if I get 12 points on it, I'm absolutely delighted, and I'll be off into the sunset with my 12-point bench boost. So enough rambling from me, Ben. What's the thoughts overall on those defenders in the bench?
Yeah, I think it's fairly solid. I mean, for the goalkeepers, you'd ideally like a bit of an easier fixture. But obviously, with the budget restraints that you do have with needing sort of 15 starters, it just means you can't go too premium in the goalkeepers. So I think you've picked the best couple of sort of 4.5s that are available in your position. In terms of defence, I think it's very solid. I think it's very sensible owning at least one Arsenal defender. You could be tempted to go maybe even a double up and just sort of double down on it, knowing that you sort of could early wild card. Just given the bench boost one strategy, I think it lends itself well to wild carding out of that early. And if say you have a Mosquera and Calafiori and the minutes aren't too secure once we get to sort of game weeks 5 and 6, you do have that potential to use that wild card fairly early on. In terms of the rest of the defence, Maguire, I don't think it's a bad option with Holloway. That's a decent enough fixture for United. Ballard, again, I think a similar thought process to you. I'm not 100% sure to keep a clean sheet, but the floor is quite high in that fixture, so I don't mind it at all. Leeds' new signing. I'm not even going to attempt that myself. Like you said, I don't think they keep a clean sheet in this game, but I think he achieves DEFCON, which I think's important to have just high floor players in this strategy. And I could actually be a decent enough fixture with Spurs at home. Lots of new players in that team to gel together, whereas we've had the consistency of Brentford, not too many changes. That could work in their favour, particularly in the early part of the season.
Yeah, fingers crossed for me if I go with this team. Into the midfield then, as I mentioned, Bruno Fernandes is in there. So is Brian Mbumo. I think for me, just assessing pre-season so far and also just looking at expected data from last season, Brian Mbumo literally smashes Cunha out the park in all expected metrics, just all metrics in general, really, last season. Obviously, he was hot off the start, sort of slowed down towards the back end of the season after AFCON. I think just judging from looking at him in pre-season, he looks really sharp. He's had a full pre-season as well with United, which I think can't really go understated. It's quite rare, given that it's been a World Cup year for players to have that. So for me, he is in there. And obviously, if Sesko isn't 100% fit, which we haven't seen him yet in pre-season, but he is in training, I think that obviously Mbumo will probably be that striker rather than Cunha. I know obviously Cunha played for Brazil as the 9 over the World Cup, but I think from a United point of view, it's probably going to be Mbumo just because Ahmad is a better replacement on that right-hand side than maybe Dorgu on the left, for example. So those two are in there. Pretty happy to own them for the opening two especially. And with the strategy, I posted the full chip strategy in our Discord, sort of debating the wild card. Probably going to look towards game week 6, hopefully. I can hold on that long just because that's after the massive international break. So there could be a chance of maybe even using a free hit earlier, sort of game week 4 when there's the Manchester derby. Obviously got triple United, not ideal as a United fan knowing how the derby usually goes. And then also, I don't have any Chelsea in this draft either, and they face Hull, so there will be the opportunity there to jump on 3 Chelsea and also the three best Chelsea assets after we've seen them for 3 or 4 game weeks under Alonso. So that's the current thought process overall. Obviously, like I say, this could change by the time we get to game week 1. Enzo Lefay's in there. For me, he's the best £6 million midfielder on paper right now. Just lots of routes to points. The fixtures are okay to start, and as I say, on this strategy, you can kind of get away with their game week. I think it's game week 4 or 5 or 3 and 4 where they face Arsenal and City back to back. As I say, I'll be probably free hitting in one of those, and then I can probably bench him in the other one. So I don't mind that at all. Pens, well, at least pen share at the bare minimum. Free kick, set pieces, get some DEFCON, open play threat. What more could you want? And then Pascal Gross, very similar penalties, set pieces, not as much open play threat and not as much DEFCONs, but I feel fairly happy having him at 5.5 million. Feels like a bit of a cheat code compared to some of the other priced players. And a lot of people may be scared of his minutes because of his age, but he literally started, I think, 18 out of 19 games and averaged 84 minutes last season since coming in January. So I just don't see that changing too much to start the season anyway. Ben, what's the thoughts in the midfield? Obviously, Norgard there as well. Obviously, if pending his availability for Everton come game week 1.
Yeah, I think if Norgard is available at 5 million, is a really, really good option. Hopefully, sort of gets the minutes that we do expect from him. In terms of the other midfielders, just given that you're sort of looking at bench boosting and the chip strategy there, I think Gross and Lafay are brilliant options to go for. A lot of managers may, end up going one or the other, just given sort of prices and that sort of thing. To have both, I think, is absolutely fine, especially just sort of given your strategy. You're going to want as many set piece takers, penalty takers, as many routes to points as possible, to try and maximize this aggressive bench boost early on. So yeah, really like that both of those have decent enough fixtures from an attacking perspective, have that minute security as well. Bruno Fernandes and Mbeumo are really interesting options. I think Bruno is well worth the price tag that you're paying for him. And then Mbeumo, I really like the opportunity to get an out of position player, especially if Sesko isn't available or not necessarily sort of fit for the starting 11. So yeah, I really do like those options there, and looks fairly strong for game week 1.
Nice. And then into the forward line then to wrap up the team. Erling Haaland is here. No surprises there. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is in there. For me, I've already said it since the game sort of launched. I think he is the best at 6 million. Again, mainly due to the routes to points and how talismanic he is for Leeds on penalties. Scored twice in the pre-season game against Liverpool, which always helps the confidence in terms of picking him as well. But Forest away, opening day, Glasner is the manager at Forest, which does kind of put me off a little bit, just because I think he will do well there. But it's at the end of the day, it's game week 1. Again, Farker is not been sacked. There's no change of manager there, so it should be fairly consistent. Which is sort of the story from most of my team. A lot of people worried about maybe World Cup minutes and things like that due to the World Cup being on. But for the vast majority of this team, not a lot of players went to the World Cup, let alone actually played in it. And if they did play in it, they didn't really advance too far. The likes of Bruno Fernandes, Haaland, quarterfinals at the very latest. No one else here, I don't think, it even progressed further than that. So yeah, I'm fairly like, if I am going to go this strategy, I'm not going to pick, say, Elliot Anderson or Declan Rice, players like that who have obviously got towards the end of that tournament, just because they are much more riskier than they maybe will be in sort of game week 2, game week 3. And then Igor Thiago rounds off the forward line. Bit of a differential, it feels like, with a lots going to João Pedro. The main reason I'm not on João Pedro is because I will be, the plan is to free hit in for that whole game. So I'm just going to go against him and with someone who I feel's got better fixtures. He's got more routes to points than João Pedro as well, with obviously penalty taking duties for Brentford. I don't think they'll get as many penalties as they got last season, but I don't think it'll regress to the point where he's not getting any at all. So yeah, for me, I'm going to chase a bit of upside and go without João Pedro in this draft anyway. And I think Igor Thiago is a decent pick to do that with. Obviously, had a very stellar season last season. And just in history of FPL since Brentford have joined the Premier League, their strikers have always done really, really well. Visser, Tony, the lot. They've been very, very good FPL assets. So I don't see that changing too much here. What's the thoughts on the overall team, Ben, and that forward line?
Yeah, in terms of forward line, I think Haaland's obviously got to be in there, just given his record early on in the Premier League season. Game week 1-6, he's been an absolute joke in every season that he's played in the Premier League. Calvert-Lewin, I really don't mind as an option there. Forest away isn't the easiest fixtures. Like, I could foresee, potential sort of shutout from Forest, but again, given Glasner's system, quite attacking fullbacks, could end up being quite an open game. So there's certainly opportunity there. Thiago's an interesting one. If you are bench boosting, I think it's worth doubling down and going either Thiago or Kinski. I probably wouldn't go both, just given that if Thiago scores, it lowers the appeal of Kinski. So for me, I'd be potentially looking. I'd actually probably back Thiago to score more than I would back Kinski to keep the clean sheet. So I'd maybe look at alternative 4.5 million goalkeepers there. That's the only real criticism of the team there. But yeah, overall, I think really solid. Okay, so moving on into my team, and I'm not going to be hitting any chips in the first 4 or 5 game weeks, I don't think. My reasoning being is I just prefer to have more data on the season that we're in before making a decision on chips. I think it will be sort of both ends of the spectrum for managers. Some managers will want to just get those chips out of the way. Some will want to hold them a little bit longer. I'm thinking more to sort of hold them and sort of assess the situation, have a bit more information before sort of going into it. As well, I know that if I use my bench boost, my free hit early on, there could be a chance that I lose some team value as well along the way. So just got to bear that in mind as well. So looking into my team, we've got to look a little bit longer term, maybe sort of a little less aggressive. In goal, I've got David Raya, a double up a defence in terms of that with Calafiori. I think obviously Raya is nailed on in that starting 11 at 6 million. Comparing to the price point of Gabriel seems very worthwhile. Despite sort of some tricky opening fixtures, I think it will even itself out over time in terms of owning this Arsenal defence. I think despite this fixtures being tricky, when we saw those tricky fixtures last season, Arsenal did keep clean sheets more often than not. Calafiori could be a really good option if he sort of starts at fullback. I sort of appreciate that it becomes a bit more of a rotation risk once we get sort of 4, 5, 6 game weeks into the season. That could be a sort of early use of maybe a free transfer. I don't want to book anything in, obviously, but I think for the opening few fixtures, more than happy to own him. His attacking appeal is really high when he's playing. So, yeah, really happy to sort of own him for that. We got Luke Shaw in there as well, who I think's the best option at 4.5 million. He is very much available for the majority of last season for Manchester United. I think he'll continue to do the same. Whilst he's not going to hit the DEFCON numbers of a Maguire, he'll have a little bit more attacking threat in open play anyway. So yeah, again, don't mind owning him at that price point in particular. Williams is in there as well. I'm really excited by the potential of him within that Glasner system going forwards. He hasn't left my draft in quite a long time. So, yeah, a decent enough opening fixture against Leeds. I think he could be quite a breakout star in FPL this year. And then Gvardiol sort of rounds off the defence. For me, this feels like probably one of the more risky picks of my team, just given that we don't really know how Maresca's going to set up. We've seen in pre-season they're a little bit more pragmatic in their build-up, a little bit more predictable. So if teams manage to work that out, they could sort of lose a little bit of control within the game and maybe sort of have to defend a little bit more. So I think DEFCON potential goes up for some of these Manchester City defenders, but clean sheet potential maybe goes down. So that's probably a spot in my team that's not 100% confirmed yet. And then on the bench, we've just got a 4 million keeper that's just sort of filling the spot there alongside Thomas from Coventry, who had some really good DEFCON numbers last year. I think those will only increase. I think he averaged about 8 DEFCONs in the championship per game. I see that increasing if the quality of opponent increases, which it should do. So yeah, Josh, that's the back line. What are your first thoughts?
Yeah, I really like it. Raya is someone I've tried to squeeze in on my bench boost and can't quite get there just because obviously the price point. But you know what you're getting with him. Starts every single week. Calafiori, I agree. If he does play, he's a really exciting asset. It's just that a little bit more risk with him though, and that's just obviously someone who's thinking long term. You probably want to alleviate some of those risks at least. So maybe Mascara or someone like that is obviously a little bit safer, but maybe less of a ceiling on them. I think Luke Shaw will be fine, like you say, for the opening couple of weeks. Obviously, United potentially looking at Lewis Hall, but I don't see that deal really getting done, to be honest, with Newcastle losing so many players this summer. It'll be, I think, another season sort of relying on Luke Shaw, at least for the opening 2 games, which is what you're going to want him for anyway. Nico Williams, I agree, looks really fun and exciting to own. Whether we sort of see that straight away or not will be interesting. Obviously, it's a new team, new manager. But still interesting nonetheless. And Gvardiol, I totally agree with you. I think that is really risky. I think there will be a 5.5 City defender. Who it will be is anyone's guess because they've got just so many options at the moment. Until we see some transfer sales, which we haven't really seen yet at City this summer, I think that will just be a sort of air of question. See, Bournemouth at home is not the worst fixture in the world for the opening day, but I think you could probably find someone at that price point with maybe even a better fixture as well, and less of a risk, obviously, with Guardiola.
Okay, so moving on into the midfield, we've got Bruno Fernandes in there with Hull away. He's going to be one of my 2 captaincy options most weeks, so I feel like I do have to have him in my team for that. For that reason, really alone, and becomes one of my 2 sort of main assets there. Szoboszlai, I think, is a really interesting option. We've seen him play a little deeper in pre-season than we thought he would. We thought maybe sort of playing in the 10 a little bit more. Seems to be Verts playing in that position at the moment. Despite that, we're seeing attacking returns in pre-season for Szoboszlai. We're seeing potentially, set piece taker, lots of free kicks, on lots of corners, DEFCON potential, and as well could have a share of the penalties. So plenty of routes to points, which is really exciting for managers. And at 7 million, whilst at this sort of when that price was released and we thought he was going to be playing in the 10 a lot more, we thought he was game breaking. He may not necessarily be that now, but I think he's still a brilliant option still. Phil Foden again feels like a little bit of a riskier pick for me, just given that City have quite a lot of options in the attacking sort of areas. I do, however, think Foden is more than likely to start those first couple of fixtures in the season for Manchester City, just given he's had the summer off. A lot of these City players have gone quite deep in the World Cup, so I do anticipate him starting the first two. Beyond that, it's difficult to say. So you're almost sort of banking on him getting, a double-digit return in the first couple of games of the season. He'll be a very volatile player in terms of price this year. He could either rise to 7.5, 8 million quite quickly, or he could drop to 6.8, 6.7 quite quickly as well, depending on minutes there. So fairly risky in terms of an option. Lefay feels a lot more secure in terms of a viable option, playing in the 10, playing on lots of routes to points, like Josh said. So I really do sort of like him. The fixtures get a little tougher for Sunderland after the first couple, but again, we've seen this last season, sorry, that Sunderland can sort of compete against those higher end opposition. Pascal Gross makes the bench for me. Again, the routes to points are really good. The penalty share, the set pieces, the minute security is all there. So I think at that price point, he is really, really good. Josh, what's the thoughts on the midfield?
Yeah, love it. I think like you, routes to points is sort of the main phrase. I think there with four of them being on most set pieces, penalties potentially as well. For some of them, obviously Szoboszlai, that's I think that'll make or break him really in terms of his ownership for game week one. If we see him maybe score a penalty with Isak on the pitch, I think that would really increase his stocks. And likewise, if Isak takes it over him, then maybe more people will be turned off because obviously he is playing deeper. But yeah, nonetheless, I agree. He is a very good asset, even if he doesn't have penalties and is playing a little bit deeper. Even when Verts gets taken off, he's the one to go into the 10. They've obviously got McAllister to come back still as well. So how they fit Verts, Szoboszlai, McAllister, and Gravenberch all in the midfield. It will be an interesting thing to see from Areola. I think Verts could even go out on the right because obviously they're lacking options there at the moment with no transfer business been done at the time of recording. So yeah, I think Szoboszlai is just one of those that you've got to wait and see, and you'll have more info on by game week one. Foden's interesting. I totally agree with what you said. I think, yeah, first couple of game weeks should be okay. Obviously, Cherky went quite deep, obviously, to, what was it, the third place playoff, whatever that rubbish game is. So, yeah, he'll probably come back a little bit later. And whether you think he'll come straight into the team or not, ask Enzo Maresca is all I can really say on that one. And yeah, Lefay and Gross, obviously, we mentioned them on my team as well. Just routes to points. That's what you kind of want at the start of the season, even when you're defenders as well, with like DEFCON appeal, like as much routes to points as possible because you're entering the season with the biggest amount of unknown quantities that you'll have all year.
Yes, and moving on up front, we've of course got Erling Haaland with that fixture against Bournemouth. This is my second captaincy option going into the first few game weeks of the season. Between him and Bruno Fernandes, it's going to be sort of the rotating the armband between them two most weeks in my head. And then João Pedro finishes off sort of the starting 11. Some decent enough fixtures to open the season. I think he is underpriced in terms of price point from FPL, which means his ownership is fairly high off the back of that. We've got a 4.5 million striker on the bench as a dead spot. So of course that means Gross and Thomas are going to be those bench options rotating in for me. Overall, fairly happy with the sort of 15 as it stands. There's the option to maybe sort of downgrade Guardiol to a safer option, and maybe sort of put myself sort of another option on the bench there. But we'll just have to wait and see. Josh, what's your final thoughts on the team?
Yeah, both forwards are fantastic picks for game week one. João Pedro, although I don't own him, I still think he's a really good pick. I just decided to go against him for a little bit of upside. I think at the start of last season he scored like, what was it, 2 or 3 at West Ham. It seemed like a massive haul. So yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he did that again. Obviously, Danny Welbeck is there, so maybe minutes could be slightly less, but I would still imagine that João Pedro plays the vast majority of minutes to start the season. And yeah, I think overall it looks good. You've got way more than enough bench depth as well with Thomas and Gross. Like Thomas, like you say, will just sort of tick over with DEFCONs, which is absolutely fine. So yeah, looks good, mate. Okay then, so there are latest drafts. Let us know what you think of them in the comments. Any questions that you've got as well. Obviously, Game Week 1 is fast approaching, it feels like. Only just, the World Cup has ended and we're almost there already. So yeah, make sure you also, if you want your team reviewed, do check out the Discord. The link is at the top of the description. There's lots of guides over there now. So yeah, make sure you make the most of that before Game Week 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
We'll see you guys
Next time. Have a good game week, everyone.